It's the first of the month. You open your budgeting app, or maybe just a fresh note on your phone, and you type out every category like a general planning a war. Groceries, $400. Rent, $1,200. Eating out, $150. Subscriptions, $60. Savings, $300. You look at it, and for a second, you feel something close to control. Maybe even pride? This is it. This is the month everything changes. Day 1, you stick to it perfectly. Day 2, also great. You skip a coffee run and feel like a financial genius. Then, somewhere around day 19, 20, 21, something happens. You're tired. It's been a long week, and you think, you know what? I'll just order food tonight. I'll make up for it later. Then, later never comes. By day 25, the budget isn't a guide anymore, it's just a reminder of how far you've drifted from it. And by the start of next month, you're back at zero, rebuilding a spreadsheet you already know you won't follow either. If that sounds familiar, you are not broken and you are not bad with money. There's actually a predictable reason most budgets collapse right around the 3-week mark, and almost nobody talks about it. It's not a discipline problem. It's a design problem, and once you understand why it happens, you can build something that doesn't fall apart the same way. My name is Cole. If you've ever built a perfect budget and watched it quietly die by week 3, hit subscribe, because today we're fixing that for good. Let's start with what's actually happening in your brain during those first few weeks, because this is where almost every budgeting guide gets it backwards. When you build a new budget, you're not just making a spreadsheet, you're asking your brain to override years of automatic behavior using pure willpower. And willpower, according to research in behavioral psychology, isn't unlimited. It behaves more like a battery that drains throughout the day and resets, sometimes only partially, overnight. Researchers call this concept ego depletion. Every decision you make, what to eat, whether to skip the drive-thru, whether to say no to a spontaneous purchase, pulls from the same limited reserve. Early in the month, that battery is full. You said yes to the budget, you're motivated, and saying no to small temptations feels easy. But here's the part nobody accounts for. Life doesn't pause to let your willpower recharge. Work stress, bad days, social plans, decision fatigue, all of it drains the same battery your budget is relying on. And by week 3, for most people, that battery is running on fumes. So it's not that you suddenly became lazy or undisciplined on day 21. It's that the system you built was secretly dependent on a resource that was guaranteed to run low. That's strike 1. Here's strike 2, and this one is sneakier. Most budgets are built around restriction, not redirection. Think about how most budgets are written. Less eating out, less shopping, less takeout coffee. Almost every line item is framed as something being taken away. And your brain, even though you logically agreed to this plan, doesn't experience it that way. It experiences restriction as a kind of loss. And we know from loss aversion research that humans feel the pain of losing something roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. So when your budget is just a list of things you're not allowed to do anymore, your brain quietly starts treating the entire plan as a threat instead of a tool. At first, your motivation is strong enough to override that feeling. But as the days go on and the small denials stack up, that quiet resentment builds, and eventually, usually right around the 3-week mark, it tips over into what feels like a small rebellion. One unplanned purchase. One, it's fine. I deserve this moment. Except it's rarely just one. Once that psychological dam breaks, a lot of people don't just slip a little. They overcorrect completely because the brain wants to compensate for everything it felt deprived of. This is the exact same pattern you see in restrictive diets. People don't fail because cookies are irresistible. They fail because restriction creates pressure, and pressure eventually finds a release valve. Now here's strike 3, and this is the one most people never even notice. Most budgets are based on a monthly view, but your brain doesn't actually experience money monthly. It experiences money in the moment. When you write down groceries, $400, your brain registers that as an abstract number on a screen. It doesn't feel real the way a single transaction does. So for the first couple of weeks, when total spending is still comfortably under that abstract number, there's no pain signal at all. You could be on pace to blow through your entire budget by day 20, and you wouldn't necessarily feel any different than someone perfectly on track, because the number that matters, the monthly total, isn't something your brain tracks moment to moment. It's something you have to consciously calculate, and most people don't do that math daily. They do it weekly, if that. Which means the moment you actually notice you're off track is often already deep into week 3, when there's barely any runway left to course correct. By the time the feeling of being over budget actually arrives, the damage that caused it happened days or even weeks earlier. So let's recap the 3 real reasons budgets fail around week 3. 1. Willpower is a depleting resource, and most people unconsciously build budgets that depend on willpower staying full all month. 2. Restriction-based budgets get experienced as loss, and that builds quiet resentment that eventually erupts. 3. Monthly budgets give delayed feedback, so by the time you realize you're off track, you've often already overspent. Now here's the part that actually matters. Knowing why something breaks isn't useful unless you also know how to build something that doesn't break the same way. So let's fix all 3 of these, one at a time. Fix number 1, work with the battery instead of against it. Instead of asking willpower to hold steady for 30 straight days, shrink the unit of commitment. Don't aim for a perfect month, aim for a perfect week, then reset. A weekly spending check feels achievable in a way a monthly one doesn't, because your brain can actually picture the finish line. You're not white-knuckling discipline for 4 weeks straight. You're doing it for 7 days, then getting a clean restart. This single shift, monthly thinking into weekly checkpoints, removes most of the burnout that causes the week 3 collapse, because you're never asking your willpower to run a marathon when it was only built to run a series of short sprints. Fix number 2, redirect instead of restrict. Instead of writing your budget as a list of things you're cutting, write it as a list of things you're choosing. This sounds like a small wording change, but the psychological effect is real. Instead of no eating out, write 1 planned dinner out this week, the one you actually want, not random ones you barely remember. Instead of no shopping, write 1 approved purchase this month, picked in advance, instead of impulsively. You're not removing the joy. You're scheduling it on your terms instead of letting it happen randomly and then feeling guilty about it. This matters because restriction triggers loss aversion, but a planned reward doesn't. Your brain doesn't rebel against something it agreed to look forward to. Fix number 3, shrink the feedback loop. The fix for delayed feedback is simple, but most people skip it because it feels tedious. Check your spending every few days, not once a week, and definitely not once a month. This doesn't mean obsessively tracking every coffee. It means a 30-second glance at your discretionary spending category every 2 or 3 days. Just enough to catch a problem in week 1 instead of discovering it in week 3. Think of it like a smoke detector. You don't want to find out about a fire from the size of the damage. You want a small early signal long before it becomes serious. A quick midweek check is that smoke detector for your budget. Now let's put all 3 fixes together into something simple enough to actually stick. Here's the rebuilt structure. Step 1, set a weekly spending number instead of relying purely on a monthly one. If your discretionary budget is $600 a month, that's roughly $150 a week. Weekly numbers feel real in a way monthly ones don't. Step 2. Pick one planned reward per week in advance, a dinner out, a small purchase, whatever fits your version of enjoying life. This isn't a loophole. It's the release valve that prevents the eventual blowout. Step 3. Do a quick spending check every 2 to 3 days. Not a deep audit, just a glance. Are you on pace for the week or not? Step 4. If a week goes over, the reset happens at the next week, not next month. This is the most important part. A blown week doesn't have to mean a blown month because the unit you're managing is small enough to recover from quickly. Here's why this version doesn't collapse around week 3 the way the traditional version does. The willpower demand is smaller because you're only committing to 7 days at a time. The resentment is lower because you built in a planned reward instead of pure restriction. And the feedback is faster because you're checking every few days instead of finding out everything at once. Near the end of the month, you've essentially removed all 3 failure points before they ever have a chance to compound. I want to be clear about something because there's an objection I know some of you are already thinking. Cole, this sounds like more work, not less. And in a sense, yes, a quick check every few days is technically more frequent than once a month, but here's the thing. It's dramatically less mentally exhausting because you're never trying to white-knuckle an entire month using a depleting resource. A handful of 30-second check-ins across a month is nothing compared to the mental load of pretending everything is fine for 3 weeks and then dealing with the financial and emotional fallout of a total reset. Less total effort, just distributed differently. And here's the long-term payoff that makes this worth doing. Every month you actually stick with your plan instead of blowing it by week 3 is real money that doesn't quietly disappear. If sticking to a tighter weekly structure saves you even $150 a month, that would have otherwise vanished to late month impulse spending. That's $1,800 a year, invested over time at a modest return. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between feeling behind every single month and actually building momentum. So here's the real takeaway. A budget doesn't fail because you're lazy, and it doesn't fail because the numbers were wrong. It fails because most budgets are built like a 30-day sprint that depends on motivation never running out, restriction never building resentment, and feedback always being instant. None of those 3 things are true for how your brain actually works. But once you shrink the timeline, replace restriction with planned rewards, and tighten the feedback loop, the entire structure stops fighting your own psychology and starts working with it. And that's really the whole secret behind people who seem to just naturally stick to a budget. They didn't get better willpower. They just stopped relying on it in the first place. If this helped you understand why your past budgets kept falling apart, hit subscribe because we're going to keep building smarter systems like this one. And before you go, I want to know, what week does your budget usually fall apart? Week 1? Week 2? Week 3? Let me know in the comments, because I'd bet a lot of people watching this are about to realize it's the exact same week every single time.